firstly, debt 9 times out of 10 is usually the right option over taking equity.
Sure.
And the second one is you have to know who you're getting into bed with before you bring that on. Vetting a partner is incredibly important because these people are going to sink their teeth into your business, and they're going to try and take it in the direction that they want. So having a partner that aligns with you and your values and the goals for the business is incredibly important.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of Entrepreneurship Simplified. Welcome. I have Ciaran MacWhite with me. Ciaran, just thanks for joining me, man. I really appreciate it.
Awesome, Keith. Yeah, great to be in touch. Really looking forward to getting into today's episode.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those of you who are listening or watching this, he reached out to me to kind of tell me about his services because we have mutual clients for Yellowfin Digital and what he does. And I was like, you know what? I am interested to learn more about it. But hey, do you mind coming on a podcast and share with me out there so I can use this to educate other people, but also educate myself. So I appreciate you doing that. And I'll let you just kind of take it away and kind of tell us a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, for sure. So look, it was when I saw Yellowfin Agency, I wanted to get in touch with you guys because e-commerce is such an exciting space at the moment. In the US alone, there's over 13 million e-commerce brands. There's 50,000 that are doing between 10 million and 100 million in revenue. Like this is a huge space in the US at the moment. And what WayFlyer does and how we work with brands is we provide non-equity working capital to help businesses cover their short-term expenses. So like their inventory, like their marketing, keeping their existing capital for their longer-term growth plans. So their R&D, their product expansions, new locations, things like that. So we're trying to address that cash crunch issue. People have POs landing. There's all sorts of other things limiting cash flow and hindering that growth. And what we found, or what my founders found 6 or 7 years ago now, is banks aren't typically lending to a lot of e-commerce brands because people are working from home. They don't want to secure assets. So it's been a really profitable space for WayFlyer to come in and solve a huge issue, not only for America and Canada, but we also operate in Australia, New Zealand, and then different parts of Europe as well.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. So, I mean, that's something I've heard from. So I've been working with e-commerce clients since 2018. And since then, cash flow is always a problem, right? And I've heard over and over and over again about like, hey, like we actually need to like dial back on our Facebook or Google spend because, we have this huge order coming in that we got to pay for. It's really unfortunate because you have clients that are getting really, really good return on ad spend. But again, just a cash flow thing, we've got tons of inventory about to drop. And you have to basically stop selling so that you can have a new product. And it's, the chicken or the egg, it creates problems. So the fact that there is a funding source like yourself out there, one, it's a little bit surprising to me because, again, banks won't do it, right? The traditional bank is just going to laugh at you and say, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. If you own your building free and clear, we'll lend on that. But other than that, I mean, it's really, really tough for them to get any sort of funding. So, yeah.
It has been, and we're not the only supplier or funder in this space. There are other people that have sort of come and gone, but I think one of the biggest things that sets WayFlyer up for success is we formed a partnership with JP Morgan about 3 or 4 years ago now.
Okay.
So that is actually where our capital comes from.
Sure.
JP Morgan has actually sort of said, look, we'll step back from this e-commerce lending space and unsecured lending space because it's too much effort. So we've essentially stepped in there. They've been an unbelievable partner to us. And what that means is we can provide capital at a much cheaper cost than a lot of other competitors out there in the market.
Oh, that's incredible. Yeah, backed by JP Morgan, that's pretty solid. So what are the biggest mistakes that you see the average e-commerce owner making when it comes to cash flow, comes to funding?
Yeah, great question. There's a good few. And this is purely just from conversations that I've spoken with people, and you can see that they're hurting. And, there's reluctance and remorse in their faces. They're talking. you through. One of the biggest ones is equity and giving away equity before they should. And it's, a lot of people, I guess it's an education experience and they don't know about brands like WayFlyer. So somebody's approached them while their business is taking off. They've given away a lot of equity. And it was, really detrimental to the future costs and profit, even decision making in the business. I think, and this is something my founder, Aidan Corbett, is really adamant on, is firstly, debt 9 times out of 10 is usually the right option over taking equity.
Sure.
And the second one is you have to know who you're getting into bed with before you bring that on. Vetting a partner is incredibly important because these people are going to sink their teeth into your business and they're going to try and take it in the direction that they want. So having a partner that aligns with you and your values and the goals for the business is incredibly important.
Yeah,
so I'd say
that's really interesting because I've seen it happen. I've seen, former clients of mine who had to take somebody on because they didn't have another option. They didn't think. And what typically happens, at least what I've seen, is you get people who are very good businessmen, business people. They see a very good opportunity that they can kind of exploit. Not trying to be mean, but they're exploiting this need that they have for short-term cash bump and ultimately take over the business. And just, it's no longer yours because then it's like, oh, you need a little bit more cash. You need a little bit more cash. We should try to do this. And then basically you're making that e-commerce business owner reliant on your cash until you can take the business, basically. So it's it's bad.
100%. So that's a big one. The other one that second fold off that is using that equity financing for short-term expenses, which should just never be the case. You should never be selling a chunk of your business to use towards short-term expenses. Yeah. Any equity that comes in should be focused towards those longer-term growth goals.
Sure.
It should be those hires. It should be the new manufacturer, the new warehouse, things like that. Speaking of manufacturers, another big one would be not negotiating terms. It really can cripple an e-commerce business in terms of that cash flow. And you'd be surprised how many people we speak with that have, net 7-day terms, net 14-day terms.
Wow.
It's rare that we're speaking with someone and they've got, net 60, because that allows that 2-month, breathing room, which is a necessity, right? Especially for these sort of multi-seasonal businesses like apparel brand. You have drops every 2 to 3 months landing for different seasons. So negotiating terms, I would also say, very, very important. Does that come up with your clients?
Oh, absolutely. And, it's interesting because, some of them are like, they pay up front everything. Like, it's not even net 7, net 14. It's like, hey, they said, give me my other credit card. So I gave them my credit card. And they don't realize that they have the option to say, hey, okay, that's cool, but could I do net 30? Can I do net 60, net 90? And, sometimes you have to work your way up that. But I guess my thing is when it comes to any sort of negotiation, if you don't ask, the answer is no. So it doesn't hurt to ask. The worst they're going to say is no. The answer is already no. So nothing has changed. You're no worse off if you don't ask, right? So
it's a great point. Everything in life is negotiable.
Yep.
Isn't it? So you don't ask, you don't get. I think it's a great point. Yeah, typically what we would see is anywhere from 30 to 50% upfront in terms of orders and costs going to the manufacturer. Another 30 to 70% at time of shipping.
Yeah.
So you've just paid a stack of cash towards something where you don't even have the physical goods. They might be landing in another month or two.
Right.
So
exactly.
Any breathing room that you can get is going to benefit you guys as a business, and obviously that cash flow and being able to make those quick decisions that you need to make as a founder to pivot your business where it needs to go.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to go back to what you said about the equity, using that cash for future, right? Because that's the other thing I've seen people when they do take equity, it's always for short term. It's not for, hey, I need to go from a 5,000 square foot warehouse to I'd like to build a 30,000 square foot warehouse or whatever it is. But like, yes, you need to be thinking when you take that equity, you need to be thinking about expanding your business, how we're going to actually grow this business, not how we're going to make it to tomorrow. Because that's, I mean, it's equity doing it that way, just it doesn't work long term. It's not a good solution.
It doesn't work. Like, I was trying to have this conversation with a founder recently, who was in the conversation of either taking funds with us to fund their inventory, or he was looking at an equity partner. And what he was saying was that the benefit of the equity partner was it was coming with guidance from this partner they were bringing in. But my question to him was, you're comfortable giving up 5% of your business for your next inventory order? Would you be comfortable giving up 5% again for the order afterwards, and the order
Right.
after that, and the order after that? It's not sustainable,
Yep.
and it shouldn't be used in that way. Whereas you take the debt funding, you're going to place that order, you take 50 grand, invest it into inventory, it might generate 150, 200 grand in top line revenue.
Sure.
It's a much more efficient way of using that capital, and you're paying a very small fee of a couple of $1,000 for a 50 grand a loan.
Yeah. Gosh. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's really, that's terrible. Like, yeah, it's one of these things like they can't see the forest for the trees is kind of what it is. Like they're just so focused on, I have to get this money or else.
Yeah.
And it just clouds all other decision making. And it hurts me as a serial entrepreneur to see somebody struggle through that, because I mean, that's a rough place to be for sure.
Yeah, and I think it leads me into the last thing I was going to say here around, sort of common mistakes. But I think a lot of founders we deal with started off in a normal full-time job, and they've
Correct.
started this side hustle with their wife or their brother or best friend,
100%.
and they get to a point where they're now dealing with a multi-million-dollar business. They've quit their 9 to 5. They've become a chief financial officer, they become a CMO themselves, they become a logistics manager, and you can get to a point when you've done too much yourself. And I think it's knowing when to bring in, advice from a fractional CFO, advice from a fractional CMO. You don't have to bring these people on full time. It's the
Correct.
great thing about it's not the great thing about COVID, but obviously people working remotely, I think that it's lent such a nice thing to offering these sort of fractional services where you can just zoom in and, have a chat like we are now. And you don't have to bring someone on full time and they have to sit in your office, all that kind of stuff.
Change the game.
So I think 100%.
Yeah.
I think, not trying to do too much themselves, and kind of knowing when to bring in an expert who might be able to handle the advice and steer your ship in the right direction.
Yeah. I mean, you literally described every client I've ever had just now. They all start with, it's a side hustle. Every single one of them is a side hustle. And some of them is turned into a multi-million-dollar side hustle.
Yeah.
But it started off as a side hustle. So these aren't people that, they have MBAs and like I'm used to doing this. They're learning as they go, right? And, kudos to them for being able to learn as they go. But, sometimes, like you said, like you need to bring in the expert to help you figure out, like, hey, like you're in over your head a little bit. Like, let's step back and like come up with some options here.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I'm so impressed when I've spoken with founders before that at 20, 21, there's a brand we were working with out of Texas. The founder started his business through his parents when he was 16. And these guys are now doing up. I can't name it, unfortunately, at the moment. But
when we get done, I'll ask you. I think I know which one it is, but yes.
They're doing phenomenally well. And I couldn't believe that he's only 20, and the knowledge that he has around this e-commerce space far exceeds mine. It's so impressive.
That's really impressive. Yeah. And again, I've said it before on this podcast and talking to, clients many times. It's easier now to start a business, I think, than ever in the history of the world, because you can just have an idea. You can put something on TikTok, on Facebook, create a Shopify site, and away you go. You couldn't do that when I was 20. I mean, when I was 20, it was 2000. Like, and we were still using the yellow pages. That was when I started that's when I started my first business. It was when I was 20. You had to get an ad in the yellow pages, and you had to wait until next year to get your ad, right? Because it only goes once a year. So, I mean, it's a complete different world, but it makes it so anybody can start a business and fairly easily. So I love it. I think it's great.
And if you look hard enough nowadays, you can almost find a free tool for
Hmm.
everything that'll
Yep.
help with
You have
those,
to
whether
work,
it be the
but yeah.
advertising, the email. That's it. Yeah, yeah. But to start you off, it's a good
Yep.
thing to get the ball rolling before you need to, start paying for
Well,
bringing in
proof
these
of
SaaS
concept,
solutions.
if nothing else, right? It's proof of
Yeah.
concept. Like, hey, my idea has some legs. Let's put some money behind it.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. 100%. And you're never going to know unless you give it a go. And the other thing I would also say is just because you started organically, if you're seeing some traffic, try it out with putting some pay behind it.
Yeah.
Because reaching that new audience that you're not currently seeing is what
Yep.
opens up, and sorting out your A/B testing is
Yep.
how you get from that initial start out phase into that next phase when you get the ball rolling.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, what are some warning signs that a business might be headed for trouble and you could help them? Like, are there typical things that you see that you're just like, hey, yeah, I know they're in trouble?
Yeah, so I guess with the warning signs, because we as a business, any new client that we're going to work with, we would underwrite their business and we would look at their revenue trends, we would look at their marketing analytics, and we would look at the sort of banking information. So if a business is too far gone and they're dipping
You
into
can't
the
help.
red and it's down with
Yeah,
revenue, unfortunately, we can't help. Our funding being unsecured, the risk would fall back onto us.
sure.
However, what I would say is typically where we will help brands is when you have your PO schedule lined up in front of you, and you're looking at orders dropping multiple times a year, and you're looking at the you're looking at your marketing campaigns you want to run, and you're thinking, I don't know if we're going to have X amount of dollars left for this campaign, or maybe it's that, but you want to pivot into a new line. That's the
Sure.
perfect time to use our funding. Brands like Geology, a beautiful skincare brand in the US. We've been working with these guys for a number of years. They took our funding to completely cover their inventory. So we were just filling inventory, filling inventory, filling inventory. That enabled them to then expand into new lines, and they end up doing 300% year-on-year growth for multiple years in a row. So I think it's just about planning. It's forward planning.
Yeah,
You have to know when those cash crunches are going to happen.
sure.
And then, of course, you can come to us. And I mean, turnaround time for us is about 72 hours. So
Wow.
much quicker than what you're going to get from a
Okay.
bank.
Yeah.
But now, I will say this, it does mean you can leave things to the last minute. But
But you
obviously, we
shouldn't.
would prefer to have a little bit of time.
Yeah, but just because you can doesn't mean you should. That's funny. That's funny. Well, I mean, so what does your average client look like? How big are they? Like how small will you work with? I mean, I'm assuming there's no such thing as too big, but I mean, there's probably such thing as too small. So what does that look like?
Yeah, great question. I mean, on the bigger end, we've worked with brands like True Classics. These guys are now valued at
Hmm?
nearly $1 billion. Um, on the smaller side, the kind of minimum requirement would be around 10 grand a month.
Oh,
We
wow.
typically
That small.
would, yeah, that's small. We typically would work with businesses from 20K a month and up.
Okay.
I would say our sort of sweet spot, or the most, the clients that I deal with on the most regular basis is kind of doing 500K up to 15 mil.
Okay.
So anywhere in between. And then, yeah, I think it's probably worth touching on as well in terms of, industries that
Hmm.
we would typically work with the most. Apparel brands. Apparel brands have such good margins, and the seasonality of their business means that
Yeah.
they're looking for funding multiple times a year to grow their
Sure.
business. In the same vein, beauty has just skyrocketed, mainly in the last few years. There's so many Instagram and TikTok trends to do with
100%.
beauty influencers. And
100%.
then the last space is the health space.
Okay.
You look at all the vitamins, and everyone wants to live forever
Supplements
now, and
and yeah.
yeah, and sleep and everything. So I'd categorize all of that together. Our data shows that typically those three industries have gross margins of around 70%.
Yeah.
So really, really strong. That would be the sort of prime real estate for us.
That's perfect.
Secondary is more around that food and beverage and homeware
Yeah.
and electronics. Smaller margins, but obviously still a need
Sure.
for those businesses.
Sure. Absolutely. So I guess from an apparel brand, so I work with tons of apparel brands. So from that standpoint, what are some case studies or success stories that you can say, hey, like we helped them, this is what we did, and kind of freed them up to get to here?
Well, I think the number one from us would be True Classics.
Okay.
These guys came to us a good few years ago, and similarly, what they wanted to do was keep expanding their business at the rate that they were doing it, which was already very, very strong numbers.
Sure.
But they could not keep up with the demand that they were having. So we ended up filling orders and placing huge, offering them huge amounts of funding. And in the end, they've been such a good partner that we just moved that to a line of credit. They could dip in and take it whenever they wanted. And these guys were valued the other day. I think I saw it at around 850 million.
Jeez.
So they've been an unbelievable partner for us.
Sure.
On the more recent side, there's a brand, Daniel Patrick. It's actually, he's an Australian founder, but he's been growing his business over in the US. These guys have been great to work with, really, really nice people. They came to us typically to fund their marketing spend because a lot of their funds was going towards their inventory.
Sure.
These guys have really stylish products, strong margins, but using our funding, strong ROAS of, I think it was 5 or 6 times. They've just seen a whole lot of traffic come to the site. Already we'd be looking at sort of secondary funding, on the back end of the year to keep up with the growth that they've generated.
Sure. That's incredible. Yeah. That's again, as we're talking, and just all these different clients of mine are kind of flashing through my head. I'm like, yeah, these people, like, this is an option. It's something that they should at least consider. So, I guess the next thing I would ask is industry trends. Like, what do you see the future of the industry? Like, where's it going in the next 5 years?
Yeah. So I to answer that, I think it's probably worth going back firstly to, this whole funding space. And I guess this, what people had access to a couple of years ago was just banks.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at banks now, it's not to say that businesses don't get funding from them, because that still happens. But the application process is very slow. I had a conversation
hard.
I had a conversation the other day with a client over in the US, and I was asking him how long he's been applying for funding. It's been 4 months, and he still hasn't gotten anywhere with access to funding.
I believe it.
So us supplying funds in basically 2 days for existing customers, we can do it next day. So it's super quick.
Wow.
The security element, a lot of people are moving away from that element of, I don't want to secure my house, my car, my whatever
100%.
else it is.
Yeah.
Especially with these tariffs going on, and the uncertainty around when that's going to end. But the other big one is, if you take a bank loan, let's say it's a 24-month bank loan for 200K, we can give you the same funding, 200K, let's say over a 6-month referral, a 6-month remittance period. In 3 months' time with WayFlyer, we'll give you guys access to more capital. So we can give you another 200 grand. 3 months after that, another 200 grand. So at the end of a year, you could have taken WayFlyer 4 times and taken 800 grand to grow your business. Whereas a bank, they're only going to let you take
that's not
one draw over that period.
Right.
So that's been a huge shift in the industry. And there isn't a lot of people that are doing what we're doing. There are other brands out there like Shopify Capital that all Shopify customers will get access to. But, Shopify is a great e-commerce brand. They're not a good capital provider.
They are not a good bank. Like, I have seen some people take that, and it is not good at all.
It's very high rates. And if you're a successful brand, I won't mention this guy's name because he was furious at this, but he had designed this dress. A very, very prominent public figure had worn this dress, done a PR story on it. He'd taken a Shopify Capital loan 2 weeks before. That dress went absolutely viral. His whole website sold out. And because they just take a percentage of your daily sales, he paid back his whole Shopify loan in 2 weeks. So he was fuming. A big difference of what WayFlyer does is we put monthly caps in place. So let's say it's a 6-month, or taking 100 grand over 5 months, you'll be essentially remitting 20 grand each month. Once you've repaid that 20 grand, let's say you're having a great month and you've repaid it on day 15, your repayments to us would actually stop until the first of the following month. So that means the cash flow is much easier to manage.
You're not just, because again, you're creating Shopify creates another cash flow problem. Like it's like you fixed one, but then you created a different one. Yeah,
exactly that.
Yeah.
So when we look at the trends of where that this is going, banks are definitely moving away from funding small businesses as more businesses like WayFlyer pop up. And we've seen this trend happening over the last 3 to 4 years. This really opens up an opportunity for us and certainly other vendors in this space. But I think there will be more options for us in diversifying our product. And, we are the market leader at the moment, and our funding is all unsecured, as I said there. Typically, we can offer those caps as well and shorter term paybacks, sort of 4 to 8 months.
Sure.
The shift from the business that we've been told is sort of coming and work in the progress for this year, which is actually really exciting. We're going to have other options. So we will be able to offer longer term paybacks to suit certain customers. We can offer fixed paybacks to suit certain customers, as well as even things like secured financing might come into play as well. So
interesting.
It means that we're not only suiting or serving, say, 40% or 50% of the market. It means we can get to that point where we're financing everybody with a need. And I've worked in businesses before where we've been the market leading product, and you kind of sit on your laurels for a year or two, and your competitors catch up with you.
Yeah.
So I think WayFlyer diversifying this year, I think it's really, really important that they do this to stay ahead of the curve and stay the market leader in funding.
Yeah, that's great. I love it. Well, so if somebody was interested in talking to you and talking about your services, how can they get in touch with you? How can they learn more about it?
Yeah, great. I was going to ask, is it worth putting my LinkedIn
Absolutely
in the sort of notes for the podcast?
Absolutely.
I would say anyone with an inquiry or even a question, would love them to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Even if it's just a conversation, you're not interested in funding, you just want to learn more. The best part about my job is speaking with founders. It is so interesting. I come from a marketing analytics background. I used to chat with, CEOs of 400, 500, 2,000 person companies, and they're not interested in talking to you.
Yeah, 100%.
You get them on the phone, they'll tell you they got 10 minutes.
Yeah.
There's no small talk. Whereas with founders, I jump on, it's like, tell me about your business. And they just open up, and it's beautiful.
It's their life, right? It's who they are.
It's their life. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I love that side. And I would encourage anyone to, reach out to me and have a conversation and, learn more about WayFlyer. And I'd love to learn more about their business as well.
Awesome. Well, sir, I appreciate your time this morning. I learned a lot. I'm sure anybody who listens to this, it's going to be some eye-opening stuff for these e-commerce brands. So I appreciate you taking the time to kind of share what you do.
Awesome, Keith. Yeah, great to chat, and looking forward to chatting again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. All right, that's a wrap for today's episode. Your next step, take what you've learned today and put it into action. Now, if this episode gave you something to think about, do me a favor and leave a review, or share it with someone you think needs to hear it. And if you have any thoughts, let's continue this discussion. You can find us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Let's simplify entrepreneurship together. We'll see you on the next one.